This is the first lesson on filters and search component training. And in this lesson, we're going to start off by focusing just on range and single value filters. So let's get started. We've created a new project called Filters and Search Component Training. Now the first thing we're going to do here is create a search. Now a search is just a grid component. And we've done that before, but we're going to create a very simple search here. So we're going to call this Lesson 1 OE History View. And building a customer search. Even though there's already a customer search in the system, we're going to create one from scratch because we're going to use this later on in our filters. So I'm going to use an AR cust file WV, which is actually, even in ES there's an AR cust file VW view, but we created our own to be more normalized between progression and ES, and that's the one we're going to use. So we're just going to take everything. There's no filters. In this case, it's just a non-filter straight up search. The only criteria being, in any search, that the customer number has to be the first field. But that'll happen by default because that is the first field. So we're going to preview that, do a standard cleanup, shorten this up a little bit, and we'll just save that, and that's it. We have a search for the customer. The next component we want to create is a data query for data validation. This is lesson 1.1 because we have to create multiple components for this particular lesson, so they all have to be a different name. This again is OE History View, and this is building a customer validation. Okay. Again, we're going to select AR cust view, same one. We're going to just select a few fields here. Just because we might want to use this validation later and bring back data to be used in that particular validation. This validation we're doing would not use data that was brought back from the validation. Now this case we do need a filter. We have to pass the customer number through as a single value. And that's it for the validation, and there is no preview for that. So now let's take and create the actual grid that we're going to use these filters on. We're going to call this Lesson 1.2 OE History View. And this is building the OE history, grid range, and single value filters. You'll see in a minute why I'm calling it that, because there's lots of different kinds of filters, and we're going to create a fairly large and complex mixture of filters. And this would be just a view. But in this case, we're just going to look at range and single value filters. And we're just going to select from the OE history. Actually, it would be OE header hist. We're going to select everything. And we're also going to do this where the invoice date is greater than at invoice date. We've done at variables in some of the past lessons. I need to do that here just so I can create some variance in the type of filters we're going to look at. So now we're going to look at a couple different things. The first thing we're going to look at is the customer number. I'm going to make the customer number a single value. Now the customer number, remember, is a unique kind of type value in Macola, and we should data type it as a customer. We have another thing down here called padding. If I were to make this a character and decided to pad left and then make this value 20 and a character of a space, I would emulate the same padding that would happen with a character type customer number. But in progression, even ES, you can have alphanumerics and numerics, and the system is smarter than that. So it's best to let the system figure that out. If you had your own table and you had your own special padding and you weren't using one of the standard Macola fields, then the padding may be a value. But we're going to use customer. Caption is customer. We need a search. Now we actually have a search for customer in the system. I can use the customer search, and we've used that, I think, in lessons before. But in this case, we're going to use our own search that we just created in this product itself, building a customer search, just so we can see how, if we had to build all this from scratch, how we'd do it. We're also going to add a validation, and we have a validation right here that we just built. That allows us to actually validate. We can do a lookup, or we can just type in the customer, and that customer will be validated. So we could either look up 901, but if we entered 99, it would fail, and succeed if we type in a correct value. So now we have a single value entry with a validation. So we could do a single value with or without a validation. But for a lot of applications I've seen where you may want to just enter, say, a purchase order number or an order or maybe a pop order, and just validate that and see return values, captured bills, things like that, that would come in handy. The next thing we're going to look at is the order number. We're going to treat the order number as a range. By the way, again, that's a special data type. Again, so we have to do data typing, and it would just be order number. Caption would be ord.no. And we're going to do a search. We're going to use one of the searches in the system this time. OE dash These are agility searches. We could also do a drop down and just select agility searches. And we're going to use the OE header or number. Now we can test that again. We want to make sure we have the right search. We're bringing back the order number from history. Another thing you can do on these is if you do Control Q, right when you're inside the grid, you want to make sure you're looking at the right search. You want to make sure that it's looking at the history table. So the Control Q would bring back the actual query, so it will allow you to double check that you selected the right thing in the system. That's something I really haven't shown before. So now we've set up two filters, and the final filter is a single value for an @ value. I've said before, oops, double click that twice, that @ values always occur at the bottom of the list, and you can remove them. The system is doing a check, so it takes a while. It wants to make sure that none of these values were used somewhere else, or it'll warn you if you try to remove it. Now this is important that we treat this not just a single value and give it a name, but if you look at a filter preview, the invoice date doesn't know it's a date field unless we tell it. If we tell it it's a date field and we do a filter preview, now it's treated as a date field. And that's important. So typing has a lot to do with how these things behave. Now I have a date field. It's pointing to a date field on our select statement. It expects to have an invoice date greater than that date. So it's important to get treated as a date field and manage the select statement accordingly. So let's run this and see what happens. We have an order number range, and I need to select a range for customer 901, and I want a range of values on the order number that later on I know is going to make sense for me for the data I want to use. And what I'd like to do is get data in 2010 for a date range. So we're going to use 346, and we'll sort these orders. Actually, let's look at 901. Sort them, and let's take that out to, like, say 670. We have a date here, and if we click on January, we can kind of scroll this back to January 2010, and let's set that. So we're going to look at everything from the beginning of 2010. We're going to bring back our data, clean up our grid, save it, and that's the end of lesson 1. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video tutorial, and I encourage you to move on to the next video tutorial in this series.